Who has already, within the last 15 minutes, been distracted by something? Be honest, you're in a safe place. Yeah, there's 10 honest people, and the rest of you are liars. Yes. Man, so glad that you're here today. I really do want to encourage you. You have some of these in your seat for our Christmas series coming up. Would you take a couple of those, the ones in your seat, and be strategic in inviting somebody? Don't just like throw them out on a table somewhere. Like think about who you're going to invite and hand these to somebody and invite them to our Christmas series coming up, because something does feel different in the air around Christmas. And we're going to talk about over the next few weeks, what is that real feeling? What's that difference that feels of the season? So be sure to bring somebody along with you for that. And then our Christmas service will be on the 23rd, I believe. So we'll want to make sure we pack the house for that. Me and my wife, 2003 got married. Okay, I think so. Okay, yeah. It's okay if she doesn't remember either. It's not good if only I forget. So we got married, and I had a job paying $6.50 an hour, and I think she may have made like $6.75 or something. So we were just rolling in cash. You know what I'm talking about? Well, after we got married, we're like, we don't have any money to go do anything, but we gotta go do something, some kind of a honeymoon. So, we went and like, let's go to San Antonio. Like, I love going to San Antonio, all the sights, and it's really fun to do. So we took a week and just went off, and we're just going to be the typical sightseers and the tourists. I mean, minus the fanny pack, we were just all in tourists and just looking at everything, seeing everything, having fun. I'd been as a kid, but just wanted to go back and experience all that stuff with new eyes. And what we wanted to do is we stayed in San Antonio for a few days, and then we wanted to, at the end of a day, about 4 o'clock or so, we wanted to head, and we had a hotel reserved in San Marcos, because in New Braunfels and all that area, there's like underground caverns and all that, and we wanted to kind of see all that stuff. Well, what happened is we'd spent all day in San Antonio just kind of having fun and hanging out, and we were going to head from San Antonio to San Marcos. We got in the car, and Christy fell asleep. So she's over there. She's usually like the one keeping me awake and keeping me focused and not us dying. That's generally her job. But I was tired, so I'm like, I can do this. I can stay awake. And so about an hour later, my eyes kind of popped open, and I was awake but not awake. You know what I mean? Like, where you're just kind of in a lull. And we were surrounded by really big buildings and a lot of traffic. And I was like, I don't think that where I'm supposed to be looks like this. Like, I was convinced, I hadn't been here since a kid to the New Braunfels, San Marcos area, but I'm like, this don't look right, and so a few days into marriage, I had to pull over to a convenience store and ask somebody where I was at. And we talked about it a few weeks ago, but I had the brick Nokia phone. No, I think at that time I had the Motorola Razr, the flip, so it was still really cool, but not functional in this moment. I had a printout of MapQuest. And where I was at was not on MapQuest. And so I went and asked this guy, I'm like, where am I at? And he said, you're in Austin. And I'm like, yeah. So I could have hit 20 people on the way, and I would have had no clue, because literally I don't remember anything in between. I have no recollection. I just opened up and what's all this traffic? And it was, we left about 4 o'clock from San Antonio, so we're in the middle of 5 o'clock traffic in Austin, having no clue even how to get back. Because, in Lufkin, you just do a U-E and turn back around. No. It's 27 exits and all that to get back around in a big city. I was scared to death and having to swallow my humble pill as a newlywed man on how to get back. Ask this convenience store person, I don't know where I'm at. So what happened was my weariness distracted me from the journey that I was on. And I wound up being somewhere that, not only did I not want to be, I didn't know where it was. I felt like I had a pretty good plan. I had a MapQuest printout, but I got off track. I just kind of spaced. And I think that really can categorize life so well. Whether it's because of fatigue or busyness or whatever it is, we can get so distracted in life that if we're not careful, we wind up being somewhere that we never planned to be and never really wanted to be, living a life we thought we would never live, being a person that we never anticipated. You know, and we talked the last 2 weeks really about that. And the first week we said if we don't watch where we're headed, we'll end up being where we didn't want to be. We'll be distracted by just what's immediate, what's in front of us, what's going on now, instead of really focusing on what's important. And it'll steal the important things from our life. And second week we said an identity, who I am, that's your identity, built on anything besides Christ, is simply a distraction and disappointment from who you really are. It's like getting in the car and looking up and saying, oh, my goodness, where am I? I'm lost. And I think some of us, we're even in that place right now in life. We look up and be like, oh my goodness, I'm surrounded by stuff, stuck in something. I didn't even know where I was going. And maybe a lot of us are still in the delusionment stage of heading there, but we're not even aware. And so through this series, I'm hoping to help us to catch ourselves in the middle of life's distractions and make sure we're focused on the right things that deserve our attention and going in the right direction. I think it's easy that we can all acknowledge that we live in a completely distracted world, right? How many people, when you drove to church, did you pass were on their cell phone? Like, I'm not going to lie, like I haven't done it. Like I'm some, I'm trying to get better, and especially with my daughter's like, don't kill us, Dad. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll put that down. She'll tell me how it is. And so it's been done, but we're so distracted. We're so distracted because our culture thrives off of distraction. That's basically what advertising is. Advertising is spending millions of dollars for you to look at them and buy their stuff. And so whatever it is, we all are being, things are vying for our attention, it seems like all of the time. And so the way I want to wrap up this series is let's talk about a few things on how do we, in our lives, defeat distraction. We've got to live determined to defeat distraction. How do we do that? Because I don't think our culture is going to get less and less distracted. I don't think our attention spans are going to get better, people. Like some of you are already gone. Like I had you for 30 seconds through the San Antonio stuff and we're done. That's just where we're at. And I don't think that we're going to grow much better in our culture with the tension and the distractions getting better. So we as a people have got to figure out a way. How do I defeat and not live within distraction all the time? Because it's going to keep my life from going where it needs to be and always focus just on what satisfies and where I am at the moment. Now, don't get me wrong. A moment of distraction sometimes of like, I just got to unplug from everything. I'm not saying that's wrong. We all need that, but it's not a way to live in. We've got to make sure to live focused on where we're meant to be. So I got about the 3 things here that I want us to realize, recognize, and to do to defeat distraction in our life. To realize what it is and to defeat that, to be able to end up where God really has for us to go. Believe it or not, like your own life, like forget that anybody else is around right now. We're just talking. God actually has something for you, has somewhere for you to go. Let's make sure we get there and worthless things don't distract us from the best things. So the first thing that we can do and put into practice in our life is recognize that this is a spiritual battle. Recognize this is a spiritual battle. See, as believers, as Christians, we believe that we are not just physical beings with a spirit component. Like there's a spirit part of us. We really believe that we are spiritual beings with a body. That meaning is totally different because we live with the understanding and realization that there's something so much more real than what we can just see, taste, smell, hear, and touch. Like there's a more real and relevant place, and it's a spirit realm, and this is a spiritual battle. As much as there is a God who loves you, there is an enemy that wants to defeat you, and that's out to destroy whatever it is that God is wanting to do in your life. I have to recognize that that this is a spiritual battle, that distraction and keeping you away from whatever that is that God has for you, it is a real spiritual thing. One of the greatest tactics of the enemy, and one of the greatest tactics of the devil is distraction. It's distraction. And so I want to look at what are a few things that we can be distracted with. What are some of those things that comes into our life that will distract us from God's path or God's plan in our life? I believe that our enemy loves to create so many other voices that we can't hear the one that's trying to speak to us and tell us where to go. To crowd our life with all of these things and all these ideas and voices all the time, inundated with just noise in our life. Another way that we're distracted is we're convinced that our own ways are the best ways. That I know what's best for me. And I know that we're good church people, so we wouldn't say that. But a lot of times we live in that lane, in that way, that really what I want is the best way. Another distraction is that he convinces us that God isn't real or simply isn't important enough to actually give devotion to. Right? I mean, so if we acknowledge the realness of God, like, okay, we serve a real God, we are easily distracted with the thoughts that he's real, but maybe not quite so important that he's worth devoting my life to. Just maybe an hour a week. But if he's real, he's worth everything. But we're convinced of this. Or distracted by keeping us so busy that we don't really think about what's the real reality. We don't really think about what's really important because we're just so busy. Who in here would say that you would categorize your life more in the busy category? Yeah, I think that's probably most. If you got kids, you're already there. I mean, keeps us just busy. Constant pressure to perform and to succeed, to live up to some kind of standard, to accomplish and be the man, be the woman. That's a distraction away. Constant problems and hurts and pains constantly in our life will distract us. Always focusing on the thing that hurts and instead of what God's really got for us. Constantly distracting us with something. All this stuff swirling and swarming around us. There was an article in Christianity Today, and it says this. It said one of the devil's greatest tools is distraction. It said it's a devastating weapon. The devil may smile every time that we disobey God blatantly, but he's just as pleased when he lures us into meaningless distraction. Distraction is the enemy of focus and clarity, two components necessary to lead a spiritual life. I mean, so like we all know, like the devil would love it to make you stumble and just blatantly sin and do something totally against God. But he's just as happy when he gets us to not do anything for God and to forget God. And so he's constantly there trying to make this happen. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8, Peter, we see as a guy, we're going to kind of define him in a moment, but as you read through the Gospels, you'll see this guy, Peter, is one who lost his focus quite a bit. Like, if there's ever a guy that Jesus was like, Peter, focus, right here, talking. That was Peter to Jesus. Constantly, it's like, come on back. I know that gnat flew by, but like, focus on me. That was kind of this guy. And he realizes the need for this because he was just as susceptible if you read through the Gospels and through his life. So Peter says this, stay alert. Like, give attention to, watch out for your great enemy, the devil. He prowls like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. This is the nature of our enemy. He's constantly on the prowl looking to devour, to destroy, to defeat us. Another thing that a lion does, it crouches and waits for its prey in the tall grass. And so we even see in Genesis with Cain and Abel, before Cain killed Abel, that God confronted Cain and said, look, there's sin in your heart. And you got to be careful because sin is crouching like a lion ready to pounce. Be careful. And so this is the way that it works, whether it's through blatant sin or just through simple distraction. The devil is looking to get us off course and keep us from doing, either sinning against God or not doing anything for God, not living our lives in his direction. That's how he works. And can I say this too? It's like a false thought that sometimes is thought in the church, that like you give your life to Jesus, and there will be no more temptation. There will be no more reason to fall. I mean, I'm going to be so focused all the time on Jesus. That's just, let me tell you, whenever we give our life to Jesus, there's a target on your back. You're like, well, I don't want to do that. I'm telling you, it's the greatest way to live, but the devil is also out to get you. And so we've got to figure out how to defeat that. And the first thing is to realize, man, this is spiritual. This is a spiritual thing of trying to get you to either sin blatantly against God or just lose focus on who he is. So what do we do? You know, even animals kind of have something figured out that I think that we struggle in. And you're like, Pastor, you just call an animal smarter than me? No, I call an animal smarter than me. And if you fit in the boat, that's great. Animals even have this idea about battle that we need to figure out. The ones who are kind of weaker, they realize you're more susceptible to attack if you're alone. Like it's the one that don't have the pack. It's the one that falls behind, the one that's not with anyone else that gets attacked. And so there's something powerful about saying, find ourselves within the context of a group. Because it's not, we always around here, we always say, get in a group, get in a group, get in a group. I'm not saying get in a group because like we want to boost numbers in a group. We want you to get in a group because we truly feel like there's life that happens in the context of other people. And if you don't do that, it's so much easier whenever you're all alone somewhere in your struggle, in whatever it is, to be susceptible to attack. And it's really our first default thing to do if you realize it whenever life gets difficult, whenever life gets out of focus, out of balance, is to pull away to ourselves. I mean, that's the instinct. And when we begin to pull away to ourselves, we get distracted and just be alone in ourselves, not surrounded by anybody else who loves us, cares about us, what will happen is we put ourselves susceptible to the attack of the enemy. We have to make sure that we're surrounded by good people. There's a real battle going on, and we can't do this alone. Now, it may be in the context of a life group here at church. Get in a life group. We just ended a semester. We'll be starting another one in February. But there's many contexts. Get good, godly people around you who will speak into you, who will love you, those people who will help guide you into what God has for you. I mean, we have to do that. We talked about in the first week that the first step to change is awareness of the issue. Like a lot of us, of our own issues, of our own distractions, the own things that we struggle with, like we have these things called blind spots. Blind spots, by definition, is we don't see them ourselves. We're not self-aware of our own stuff. And what we do is we see it in someone else and we realize it's horrible, but we minimize it and marginalize it in ourselves. Like you see what they're doing? You may do the same thing, but like, no. I'm not an angry person. I just get really excited and passionate about what I believe in. I'm not greedy. I'm just careful with my money. You know, I'm not religious. I'm just holy. I'm holy. I mean, we minimize what we deal with, but we can always see it in others. We need other people around us to show us so that we can be aware of where we need God to intervene, where we're not given to God. I had a friend growing up that just had a horrible breath. I'm talking like great personality, bad breath, you know? So we want to, I was in since junior high with Chad. It's not him. I kind of caught eye contact. Not talking about you, man. Not talking about you. But like, it's one of those people that you want to hang out with, just not when they're close proximity. You know what I mean? Like, hey, air high five. Love you, man. You're so cool. Just don't get any closer. And it's also one of those very sensitive things. Like, it hurts somebody's feelings if you say, brother, you got bad breath, and nobody wants to be around you because it stank. So easier than say that, like nobody just said anything. We just didn't kind of hang out with him. But there's a lot to be said about self-awareness. He couldn't smell his own breath, I guess. I don't know if it was a lack of brushing or just something, but what we need in our own lives is to be told when we got bad breath. To be told whenever, our hair's messed up. But on deeper levels, to be told and to help whenever there's things that we don't see. And that happens in the context of people who love us, but most importantly, love God. And will help push us and pull us towards what God has for us. We need to be self-aware. We need to realize this is a battle. It's a spiritual battle. And we need people and community around us in this battle. We can't do it alone. The second thing is, how do we defeat distraction? Second thing is, it's in your head. It's in your head. This didn't to go against the first one. There's a spirit realm, but we've got to fight a lot of times is the battle that's going on right up here. I mean, there's a fierce battle that goes on in your head all the time. It's a battle of really attention, short attention span. I think a lot of us are spiritually ADD. You know what I mean? It's like we love God and then we lose focus within 25 minutes of the prayer that we just prayed. It's an attention on what really matters. Just as much as it's distraction is a spiritual issue, because it is, man. The enemy is trying to get you off focus and going somewhere else. It's an attention issue as well. We have to define the important things. We have to define. If you don't ever define something, you're never going to live for it. And you're just going to hope to get somewhere that you never defined, but you're going to wind up being somewhere you didn't want to be because you didn't actually set where it is that you wanted to get. Define the important things in life. We talked about this even the first week some, but you got to set and keep your attention on those things that really matter. In Matthew chapter 16, Jesus is in this area called Caesarea Philippi, and he's with his disciples, and people are talking all about Jesus all around, like Twitter feeds are blowing up about Jesus, Facebook posts are being made about him, Instagram, they're snapping pictures and putting filters. And Jesus says this, what are they saying about me on all that? Or what are they, in the context of your groups, when you hear talk about me, what are they saying about me? And they said, some people say that you're a prophet, that you're like Moses or Jeremiah come back to live. Like that's what they're saying. And then he stops and looks at his disciples and he says, but who do you say that I am? And then our old buddy Peter, he speaks up and he says, you are the Messiah. You're the Son of God. And this is a huge claim because for thousands of years, the Jews have been looking forward to this guy named the Messiah who hasn't come yet. And every generation, they keep looking for signs of the Messiah who would save them, who would deliver them, who would deliver the whole world, this Messiah. And so Peter said this is a huge claim. And if he's wrong, he'd probably get smacked. Like, what are you calling me the Messiah for? And in Matthew 16:17, here's Jesus' reply to him. He said, Jesus replied, blessed are you, Simon, which was his name, and he was called Peter by Jesus first. He said, but Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but from my Father in heaven. He said, God in heaven has revealed to you that I'm the Messiah. Like, you got it right. Good job. Gold star. Good job, buddy. And so we kind of read that Peter just got a revelation from God. His focus was right. Then let's read 4 verses down. Starting 4 verses down. They're on a short walk later, and Jesus picks up with talking about how he's about to be killed and tortured, and all this it's got to happen in order for what I set out to do. Like, he's telling them what's about to happen. Chapter 16, verse 21 through 23 says this. It said, from that time, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hand of the elders, the chief priests and the teachers of the law, that he must be killed on the 3rd day and be raised to life. Like, here's what's about to happen. Okay, and then verse 22 says, Peter took him aside. Okay, Peter just called him the Son of God, the Messiah, and Peter took him aside to rebuke him. You're talking to the Son of God, and you're going to slap his hand. Okay? Peter, come on, buddy. And it says this, "Never, Lord," he said. "This shall never happen to you." Why? Because he would begin to focus on himself. He was looking at, he's like, "I don't want you to leave. I don't want this to happen to you." I mean, it was with good motives, right? I don't want you to die. But here's Jesus' response. I love it. I'm sure most of us have heard this. The guy that he just said, "Blessed are you, Simon Peter, blessed." Verse 23, Jesus turned to Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan." It's like 6 verses down from where he just said, "Blessed are you, Peter." "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You don't have in mind the concern of God, but merely human concerns." How quickly it was that Peter went from complete focus to focus on something else. And if this guy that hung out with Jesus is susceptible to losing focus, we are too. But Jesus makes very clear here, look, there's 2 places that you can focus on. You can focus on the concerns of God and what God has, what God's doing, or you can focus on concerns of you and your own desires and what you want to accomplish. And it's like a light switch, basic light switch. I installed one this week, and to you who have done it before and you're electricians, I had to look up on YouTube. I didn't know where the wires went. Okay, I'm just going to be honest. But it's pretty simple. On, off. Even I couldn't mess that up. You know what I mean? It's like on or off. And that's really how it is when we live focused on God or on self. There's either God or self. But what we want to live like is like in the back we have these dimmers where there's an on and off, but there's everything in between. And so we live our lives and we try to live our lives somewhere in between. Like, I'm going to halfway give everything. Like, God, I'm going to give you all this, just not over here. We want to, I'm going to give some, God. I'm going to go 50% brightness. But that other 50%, God, you don't get that. You don't get those concerns. You don't get that attention. It's somewhere else. See, there's no dimmer switch. There's an on or off. But we live like we're on some kind of a spiritual dimmer, and it doesn't work that. See, the beauty is we have the choice on what we focus on. We could be drones and robots where God's like, "You will serve me," and then we would just serve him. But we have a choice to make. What will we focus on, set our attention to? And where we set it is where we head. We have to define those important things, and it begins up here, our attention of what we focus on, where we want to wind up. It's either God or really our own humanness. Romans 8:5 says this: "Those who live according to the flesh meaning the opposite of what the Spirit desires in your life, that selfish desire, that sinful desire, that desire for just me, those who live according to that have their mind set on your own flesh desires, those things that you want. But those who live according to the Spirit have their mind set on what the Spirit desires." It's all about, God, give inside of me what you desire, and I want to live in that. We get to choose. So catalog your day. And think about, what is my life living to? Just me? God, or am I trying to live somewhere in between? What's the focus of my life? Either a pursuit of my own impulse and passion, or it's a pursuit of his passions. And I can tell you which one's going to end up a better result. Because I think a lot of us have tried both. And we know which one leads better. It's that direction towards God. Setting your mind is an active activity. It's something that we got to make ourselves do. Because forgetting God doesn't take training. Right? You don't have to train yourself to forget your anniversary. It just happens. Maybe you're the ones that but you got to be intentional on setting that alarm, setting that calendar to alert you to do it, to remember to bring home them flowers or you'll die. You know what I'm talking about? It's the important things that we a lot of times we don't have to intentionally forget, but it takes intentionality to remember. And so the same way goes for our life as we're following after what God wants. It takes an active focus saying, I'm going to put things in priority and into play in my life to remember what's important. C.S. Lewis, he has a quote, and he said this. This is before the iPhone came out. This is before, DVR and Hulu and Netflix. So we know this is a humanness issue, not a Facebook and social media and tech issue. He says this, in our own time and place, he says, avoiding God is extremely easy. Just do this. Avoid silence. Avoid solitude. Avoid any train of thought that leads off the beaten track. Concentrate on money, sex, status, health. And think about everything that our culture focuses on. Every show you watch, every ad that you have fits into one of those. It's all pulling us toward money, sex, status, or health. Pretty much. And all those on their own aren't bad within the right contexts, but not to be focused on. He said, or above all, your own grievances, what you want. He said, keep the radio on, live in a crowd, use plenty of sedation. If you must read books, select them very carefully. Why? Because you wouldn't want to focus on God. He said, you'd be safer to stick to the papers. You'll find advertisements helpful, especially those with sexy or snobbish appeal. Like, he's just saying, look, the opportunity to avoid God abounds. We don't have to focus on getting off track. We have to focus on where we want to be and how we want to get there. And be determined to follow it. Romans 8, 7 through 8 in the Message version. I love the Message version of this. Focusing on the self is the opposite of focusing on God. Anyone completely absorbed in self ignores God, ends up thinking more about self than God. That person ignores who God is and what he's doing, and God isn't pleased at being ignored. Your heart will follow where you focus. And it's so important. A great way to train your brain is to practice a thing called solitude. I would say to train your brain to refocus on God and the things that are important, practice solitude. It's a lost art. And by solitude, I mean like silence, quietness. How often do we make a practice of trying to sit in that and be in that? It's a busy life because we feel like it's not productive to be silent. It's not productive to have those moments. But one great way that you can train your brain to focus on God and the right things is practice solitude in your life. It's a lost art. Unplug and sit and think on God. Go on a walk. Leave the phone in another room. That long drive, make it intentional. Whatever you have to do, but practice solitude in your life. Look at some of these, a couple of these verses. Psalm 46:10. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 62:5 says, let all that I am, this is David, and this is so powerful. Let all that I am wait quietly before the Lord, for my hope is in him. Learn to fine-tune God's voice in the silence so that you can recognize it when you get in the crowd. A lot of times we get busy in life and we have no clue what his voice sounds like, so we're headed somewhere we shouldn't be. Focus in on God's voice. Practice solitude in your life. And we can come up with every excuse in the world not to practice solitude. I'm telling you, find a moment, find time to be quiet, to settle your heart, and every thought in your life is going to come out in those moments. And do everything you can just to focus your mind on God and allow him in those moments to speak to you. Last thing, to defeat distraction. Throw away things that don't belong. Throw away things that don't belong. Have you ever went to the fridge, you opened it up, and you're just like, oh, man, like something does not belong, right? Like that smell that's been trapped in there, you open it and it just releases into your smell sensors. and it's rough. Y'all know what I'm talking about. So what do? Like you're looking and you find this like slimy something that used to be something else, and you're like, whoa! And then so you don't just like close it and shut the door and just forget about it. It's only going to get worse. So what do? You gotta clean out the junk, and you probably got to get like a scrub rag, and like maybe like an old shirt, because this stuff is oozing and it's nasty. And you're like, I don't even know if that used to be a grape or cheese. You know what I'm talking about? Come on, y'all found that in your fridge before, or that head of lettuce that's like black. You're like, I should eat more veggies because they all ruin, that kind of thought in your head. Like, man, we got to clean out the junk. We got so much junk sometimes in our life. Sometimes there's so much junk in our life that we can't focus on the things that should be in our life. Hebrews 12:1 says this. It says, therefore, since we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance. Perseverance, the not giving upness. That's what that is. Let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. There's a race marked out for us. It said, but we got to get rid of the stuff that tangles. I mean, that's what sin and distraction are. They're snares and things that will entangle us. I mean, our phones and social media and all that so much is easily becomes things to entangle and trip us up if we're not careful. We get totally distracted from where we're supposed to be. So finding what doesn't belong, how do you do that in spirit life? You got to start realizing what does belong. It says this in verse 2, it says, fix your eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and the perfecter of our faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross. Listen, there was a joy set before Jesus. Even in the suffering and the difficulty, he saw what needed to happen for you and for me. And there was a joy that was set before him to endure the pain of the cross for us. The joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame. And he sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. He said, consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. But we realize what's not supposed to be there is we have to keep focused on Jesus, who has to be there, who has to have our life. We don't focus on Jesus. Look, I don't want you to focus on Jesus this morning or so that he can accomplish your wish list. That's a genie God. God's a good God, and he blesses us more than we deserve. But Jesus feels something so much deeper on the inside of me than just a wish list that I bring before him. If that's the kind of Jesus that we want to serve, you're going to be very disappointed all the time whenever all your need list isn't met. But there's something so much more. And I think what we have to do a lot of times whenever things are getting off balance, is we got to remember to preach the gospel to ourselves. Man, some of us have been Christians for so long, like, oh yeah, we almost see that as elementary. Yeah, Jesus died on the cross for me. I think we need to regain our focus by remembering, look, Jesus died on the cross for me. I was the joy set before him. The salvation of my life. And so we get like something's not right, man. We got to preach to ourselves sometime. Make it awkward if somebody walks into your room. Like, Jesus died for me. And there's so many things that won't line up with what Jesus is wanting to do inside of you. So we got to start looking at our lives through the lens of like, I'm a child of God. I am his. He has a calling for my life. And what are the things that just don't belong? Like, do I need to delete things off my phone? Do I need to not grab my phone before a certain time? Do I need to change the circle of friends? What do I need to get rid of? And because there are some things that we need to get rid of, the junk that's smelling up our lives. Would you stand with me? I think in this place, if we would be determined to clean out some junk, like seriously, go home determined to say, I'm going to find some of that stuff that just don't belong, and I'm going to get rid of it. I'm going to get rid of some things today. I think a lot of the anxiety and the worry that we carry is from heaping too many things on us that just don't belong. I've talked to so many people, they're like, man, I got to quit listening to the news so much. I got to quit reading all that junk, because all I'm doing, I'm starting to hate everything and everybody. I don't know what it is for you, but what's changing the climate of your life in a negative way, and say, God, I want to focus on you and get rid of some of that junk. Because you don't smell the fridge smell, but everybody around you does, like that bad breath. We got to get rid of it. It's a battle. Don't do it alone. It's in your head, so practice some solitude. Get quiet with God. And throw away what doesn't belong by focusing on what does. I believe God's got some awesome things for us. Now, I believe that there's some people who are changing atmosphere of work and of home, that there's deliverance, there's hope. But it comes from people who say, you know what, I'm not going to live sidetracked by junk any longer. I'm going to live focused on my God. And you know what? The holidays are the best at distracting us from what really matters most. Believe me, I'll be out there shopping because I like watching people. I mean, I do. I'm going to stand back and just watch people fight over that TV over there. It gives me so many great illustration points for sermons. You know what? But let's not let those things get us off focus. That's life in general. Let me pray for you. Father, I thank you so much that God, in life, even though there's so much opportunity for distraction, God, there's so much opportunity to get our eyes and focus off of what matters, that God, we will be people who will be intentional in focusing on what truly, truly matters. God, there's no one like you. God, and forgive me, God, if I've gotten my life off of focus with things that just don't matter. What does my time look like? How do I start my day? God, because I want you to be glorified and honored in all that I do, God, and not some meaningless distraction of something the enemy is trying to get me to focus on. As your heads are bowed, I just want to ask you a simple question in this place. If you're here today, I just want to let you know there's a God in heaven who loves you. He sent his son, Jesus, for the purpose of redeeming the entire world. Because we've all sinned, we've all fallen short, we've all messed up. And Jesus' joy on the cross, the reason he was going was for us to be redeemed and set free, to be able to live out the purpose that God has called us to for now and forevermore. And that life is available to all who reach out to God. And if you're in this place and you've never given your life to Jesus before, and you're like, this is the day I turn to God and focus on what really matters, allow God to do something great in your life. If that's you, I just want to know who I'm praying for. Would you raise your hand in this place and let me pray for you? If today you're like, this is the day, man, I got to give my heart to Jesus. Come on, I see that hand. Don't be shy. I've seen some hands. And as we leave, if you raise your hand, if you didn't raise your hand, we're all just going to pray a prayer together. And a prayer in words of our voice don't change anything. It's whenever we're with our heart, we cry out to God. He changes us from the inside out. Say this with me, everyone. Say, God, forgive me. Make me new. I focus on you, not distractions. I won't let the enemy defeat me, but I'll defeat distractions in my life. Thank you for your sacrifice, that I was the joy of the cross. Father, I thank you so much that in this place, God, you've created new destinies and new paths for people in here, that God, we're leaving this place more focused than ever before to make a difference, to live our lives the way that we're intended to. And God, I believe that the gates of hell are shuddering at people who would just focus on God, because there's nothing that can stop a person who is fueled by the Spirit of God in our lives, God. So I pray that we would leave this place, and not just for Sunday, but God, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, through all our lives, that God, we would see a difference made through us carrying the Spirit every day and being intentionally focused. God, help us to get good, godly people around us. Help us to focus on being quiet and still before you, God, and help us to get rid of some junk that doesn't belong. Thank you, God, for this morning, for all that you've done. In Jesus' name, we all said, amen. Awesome.
Joining us online today. Make sure to stay connected with us through the week on Facebook and Instagram at City Church Lufkin. If you're looking for a church home in the Lufkin area, we'd love for you to join us on Sundays at 10 a.m. We believe that God has a greater life in store for you. Let's discover that together. If you've been blessed by this ministry, we'd love to give you the opportunity to help us continue to reach others just like you. By giving your tithing offering, you're making a way for other people to experience the love and hope of Jesus. There's a link in the description where you can go online and make a donation, or you can simply give through text message. Simply pull out your phone and text a dollar amount to 84321. Whether it's a one-time donation or a recurring gift, every dollar makes a difference. And before you go, we want to encourage you to remember that God's not just waiting for you to get everything together or to make it through the storm. He's not afraid of your crazy or the mess or the struggle. He's right there with you in the middle of it all. We'll see you next week.